The observation deck overlooked a massive artificial valley, encased in a shimmering energy field that warped the light passing through it. Two figures stood at the railing, one tall and spindly with mottled blue skin, the other shorter with a bulbous cranium that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The new specimens arrived yesterday, Administrator Kelroth said, his three-fingered hand gesturing toward a cluster of structures at the far edge of the enclosure. 17 of them, all captured when they inadvertently crossed into consortium space. His companion's cranium flashed bright orange, indicating concern. You're certain they belong in Predator enclosure? Absolutely. Kelroth's membrane-covered eyes blinked vertically. Their history speaks for itself. Nuclear weapons, global wars, genocide. Even their entertainment glorifies violence. He passed a thin data tablet to his companion. The directive from the Council was clear. For the safety of all civilized species, humans must remain contained. Below them, a human woman stared up at the observation deck. Despite the distance, Dr. Helena Morse could see the alien figures examining her habitat like it was nothing more than an interesting experiment. Her hand clenched into a fist. "We're not animals," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "We're not your specimens. 3 weeks. That's how long they've been trapped in this mockery of an Earth environment. 3 weeks since their exploratory vessel had taken that fateful wrong turn through an uncharted wormhole, emerging in what they now knew was protected space controlled by the consortium of civilizations. The diplomatic mission had gone horribly wrong the moment their ship was surrounded. Captain Mikhail Mike Carter's attempts at peaceful communication had been met with electromagnetic pulses that disabled their systems, followed by boarding parties in hazardous material suits. Mike had fought back, of course he had, and was shot with some kind of stun weapon for his trouble. When Helena and the others had awakened, they were here, the Predator enclosure of what their translated information packets called the Galactic Zoo, a vast conservation system spanning multiple planets where the consortium preserved and studied various species. Some for conservation, some, like humans, for containment. Thinking about escape again. The voice behind her belonged to Security Officer Jared Walsh, one of the 17 crew members now trapped in this glorified cage. Helena didn't turn around, thinking about how quickly they decided we were dangerous. They didn't even try to understand us. "We did crash a ship into their space station," Walsh pointed out. "That was an accident. The wormhole destabilized our navigation systems." She finally turned to face him. But they've already made up their minds. The classification is official. Humans are predators. Dangerous. To be contained indefinitely. Behind them, in the small collection of prefabricated structures that served as their living quarters, Captain Carter was gathering the crew for another strategy session. His right arm was still bandaged from the boarding incident, but his eyes burned with the same determination that had made him a respected commander. "Dr. Morse," he called. "We're starting." Helena nodded, taking one last look at the observation deck, where Administrator Kelroth was still gesturing toward their enclosure, no doubt explaining to his companion why humans couldn't be trusted with freedom. "We'll prove them wrong," she muttered. "Whatever it takes." The meeting space was cramped, a repurposed storage room in the largest of their assigned structures. Maps drawn from memory covered one wall, along with notes on observed guard rotations and the locations of security cameras. 17 faces looked back at Helena and Mike, some showing despair, others determination. "Report," Mike said, turning to their engineer. "The energy field is beyond anything I've ever seen," Lynn reported. "It's not just a barrier. It adapts to any attempt to disrupt it. And it's not our only problem. The entire enclosure is under surveillance. The only blind spots are in the sanitation facilities, and even those are monitored for unusual time spent." Mike nodded grimly. "Dr. Morse has an update as well." Helena stepped forward. "I've been studying the information packets they gave us. It appears the consortium has been collecting data on Earth for decades. But the data is selective. They focused almost exclusively on our conflicts, our wars. Nothing about our art, our healing technologies, our cooperation. Propaganda," Security Chief Rodriguez said. They're using our worst moments to justify keeping us here. The door chimed, indicating an external visitor. The maps were quickly covered with a tarp as the entrance slid open to reveal Administrator Kelroth, flanked by 2 guards of a species they hadn't encountered before, bipedal with chitinous exoskeletons and multiple eye clusters. Captain Carter. Kelroth's voice came through a translation device at his throat. Dr. Morse, I hope I'm not interrupting. Mike straightened, his face a careful mask. Not all. We were discussing our accommodation requests. Yes, your requests. Kelroth's voice had the artificial flatness of machine translation, but his body language conveyed dismissal. I'm here for the scheduled evaluation. Dr. Morse, as your designated xenoanthropological specialist, you've been selected for interview. Helena exchanged glances with Mike, who gave a subtle nod. This was an opportunity, their first chance to plead their case directly. I'd be happy to answer your questions, she said. The evaluation room was sterile and cold, with recording devices visible in each corner. Kelroth sat across from Helena, his long fingers manipulating a holographic display she couldn't read. Let's begin with basics, he said. Our research indicates humans have engaged in over 15,000 wars in your recorded history. Is this accurate? Helena took a deep breath. War has been part of our history, yes. But so has peace. So has cooperation. We've overcome countless divisions. Your species developed nuclear weapons capable of planetary destruction, Kelroth interrupted, and used them on your own kind. In one war, yes. And we've spent every day since working to ensure it never happens again. Kelroth's membrane eyes blinked slowly. Your entertainment media is saturated with images of violence. Your children play games simulating combat. Your economy rewards aggressive acquisition behaviors. You're cherry-picking, Helena said, frustration building. For every violent movie, there are 1,000 love stories. For every war in our history, there are millions of acts of kindness that go unrecorded. These are not my personal observations, Dr. Morse. These are scientific conclusions reached by our Xenobiological Council. Kelroth displayed a series of brain scans. Human neurochemistry shows extraordinary spikes in dopamine and adrenaline during aggressive acts. You are literally wired for violence. All species with survival instincts have fight responses, Helena countered. That doesn't make us mindless predators. No, Kelroth agreed, and for a moment Helena felt hope. Then he continued, not mindless. That's precisely what makes your kind so dangerous. You combine predatory instincts with strategic intelligence. In our taxonomic system, that places humans firmly in the highest threat category. He closed the holographic display. The evaluation is concluded. Your containment classification will remain unchanged. For the safety of the galactic community, humans will remain in predator enclosure indefinitely. As she was escorted back to the human compound, Helena felt a cold certainty settling in her stomach. Diplomatic arguments wouldn't work. The consortium had already decided what humans were. They would have to show them how wrong they were. The next morning brought a new development. As Helena walked the perimeter of their enclosure, an exercise routine she'd established to map the boundaries, she noticed another section of the predator enclosure becoming active. The previously dark area lit up as its environmental systems activated, and transport vessels moved toward it. They're bringing in new specimens, Mike said, joining her at the invisible barrier that separated their section from the adjoining habitat. I wonder what poor species is classified as dangerous this time. They didn't have to wait long to find out. The transports deposited large, reptilian creatures into the newly activated environment. Standing on powerful hind legs with forearms that ended in curved talons, they moved with startling speed despite their bulk. Their scales shifted color as they investigated their surroundings, flashing warning patterns when they approached the boundaries. Rudax, a melodic voice said from behind them. Helena and Mike turned to find one of their guards. Not the usual consortium security, but a being they hadn't seen before. Humanoid, but with translucent skin through which complex circulatory systems were visible, moving with graceful, floating motions. I shouldn't speak to you, the guard said. But I thought you might want to know. Rudaks are considered apex predators on their homeworld. Highly intelligent, highly aggressive. They've been extinct in the wild for centuries, preserved only here. And who are you? Mike asked cautiously. My designation is Ciala. Was a xenobiological researcher before being reassigned to security. The being's circulatory system pulsed with a bluish glow. I was deemed too sympathetic to research subjects. Helena stepped closer. You don't believe we belong here. Ciala's translucent features rippled in what might have been discomfort. What I believe is irrelevant. The classifications exist for a reason. She began to drift away, then paused. Though between us, I've never understood why they keep the most dangerous predators so close together. Almost as if she stopped abruptly. I've said too much. Over the next few days, Helena observed the Rudaks carefully. Though initially aggressive toward one another, they quickly established a hierarchy and began working cooperatively to test their enclosure's boundaries. They were problem solvers, using tools when necessary, communicating in complex vocalizations and color displays. They weren't just animals. They were people. The realization struck her one evening as she watched a younger Rudak being taught by an elder how to use a makeshift tool to extract food from a dispensing mechanism. The deliberate instruction, the patience of the teacher, the obvious intelligence. These weren't mindless predators. Mike, she said, finding the captain in his quarters reviewing their limited options. I think I understand now. This isn't just a zoo. It's a prison for species the consortium fears. Mike looked up from his notes. Of course it is. They made that clear from day one. No, listen. The Rudaks, us, probably others we haven't seen yet. We're all intelligent species capable of self-determination. Species that might challenge consortium dominance if given the chance. Mike considered this. So the predator classification might be political, not biological. Exactly. And Ciala hinted there might be something else going on. Why keep dangerous species together unless they want to study how we interact? Mike finished, his eyes widening. Or worse, they're using us somehow. Their conversation was interrupted by alarms blaring across the compound. Red emergency lights bathed everything in crimson as the team gathered in the common area. What's happening? Rodriguez demanded. Through the barrier, they could see the Rudak enclosure in chaos. The reptilians were charging their containment field en masse, coordinated in a way that suggested planning. Guards were rushing toward the disturbance, weapons drawn. They're trying to escape, Helena realized. And they might succeed if they keep hitting the same spot. Mike's face hardened with decision. This is our chance. While security is distracted, we find whatever weakness exists in our own containment. And do what? Lynn asked. Even if we get out of our enclosure, we're still trapped in the facility. One problem at a time, Mike said. Dr. Morse, you've mapped more of this place than anyone. What's our best bet? Helena hesitated only briefly. The northwest corner, where the field interfaces with the artificial terrain. There's an equipment access point that might be vulnerable during a security override. As the crew mobilized, executing the escape plan they'd rehearsed but never thought they'd use, Helena caught sight of something alarming. In the confusion, handlers in protective gear were entering the Rudak enclosure, armed not with standard weapons, but with devices she recognized from her own field, biological sampling tools. They weren't trying to stop the escape. They were using the chaos to collect specimens. Mike, she called, but he was already coordinating the team's movements toward their target point. Just as they reached the northwest corner, the facility lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the shimmering energy field winked out. Mike didn't hesitate. He shoved through the momentary gap, pulling Helena after him. Four others made it through before the field re-established, trapping the rest inside. We'll come back for you, Mike promised those left behind, then turned to Helena. Where now? They were in a maintenance corridor, sterile and utilitarian. Helena pointed to a service junction. If the facility layout is consistent, that should lead to a central hub. The small group moved cautiously through the corridor, alert for guards. Instead, they encountered something unexpected, another escaped prisoner. A large, furred creature with scaled patches was hunched in a cross corridor, nursing what appeared to be a wounded limb. It looked up at their approach, bearing impressive fangs, but made no aggressive move. Hestari, a voice said, and Helena turned to find Ciala floating behind them, her transparent body pulsing with agitated patterns. An apex predator from the Cygnus arm, nearly extinct because their homeworld was terraformed for consortium expansion. "You're helping us," Mike said, not a question. Ciala's circulation patterns darkened. "I'm committing treason. But what's happening here? It isn't right. The consortium was founded on principles of conservation and balance. This facility perverts those ideals." "What do you mean?" Helena asked. "Follow me. There's something you need to see." Ciala led them through a complex series of maintenance tunnels, avoiding security checkpoints with practiced ease. The wounded, Hestari followed at a distance, apparently recognizing Ciala as an ally. They emerged in a dimly lit laboratory complex that bore little resemblance to the public-facing areas of the Galactic Zoo. Here, there were no observation decks or informational displays. Only equipment Helena recognized with growing horror as genetic manipulation technology. "This is what I was reassigned for questioning," Ciala explained, her voice quivering. "The Zoological Preservation Initiative is a cover. The real purpose is Project Apex, a classified military program." She activated a display terminal, revealing rows of containment tanks filled with fluid. In each floated what appeared to be embryonic forms, but twisted, hybridized in ways that defied natural evolution. "They're combining genetic material from the most aggressive species," Ciala continued, "creating biological weapons for consortium expansion." Mike approached one tank, his face hardening. "These look human. Human central nervous systems combined with Rudak reflexes and Hestari sensory capabilities," Ciala confirmed. "The perfect infiltration unit. Your species wasn't classified as predatory because of your history, Dr. Morse. You were classified that way because your genetic adaptability makes you ideal source material." Helena felt sick. "We need to expose this. The entire consortium needs to know." "That won't be possible," a new voice announced. They turned to find Chief Biologist Arhin standing in the doorway, flanked by security drones. Unlike Administrator Kelroth, Arhin was a small, hunched figure with overlapping plates covering most of his body. His eyes, set deep in a bony ridge, gleamed with cold intelligence. "I'm disappointed, Ciala," he said. "You showed such promise as a researcher before developing this unfortunate ethical confusion." "This is illegal even under consortium law," Ciala shot back. "The Council never authorized genetic experimentation on sentient species. The Council authorized whatever ensures consortium dominance," Arhin replied smoothly. "Now, I suggest you all return to your enclosures. Security protocols have been temporarily disrupted by the Rudak incident, but they'll be restored shortly." Mike stepped forward. "We're not going back, and we're not letting you continue these experiments." Arhin sighed. Always the aggressive response. So predictable. He gestured to the drones. "Retrieve the specimens. Minimal damage, please. Their genetic material is valuable." The drones surged forward, but before they could reach the humans, the Hestari that had followed them let out a deafening roar and charged. Its massive body slammed into the lead drone, sending it crashing into laboratory equipment. Chaos erupted. Mike and the security team seized the opportunity, using their combat training to engage the remaining drones. Helena grabbed Ciala and pulled her toward a communications terminal. "Can you broadcast what's happening here? To other sections of the facility, or better yet, outside the consortium?" Ciala's translucent fingers flew over the interface. "Internal communications only. But that might be enough if we can reach the right people." While the battle raged around them, Ciala accessed the terminal, bypassing security protocols with inside knowledge. Helena recorded a desperate message explaining what they discovered: the illegal experimentation, the false classifications, the violation of consortium principles. "Sending," Ciala announced, "to all research staff and junior administrators." the ones most likely to still believe in consortium ideals. A momentary hope flickered, but was quickly extinguished as alarms blared and the laboratory doors sealed. Gas began pouring into the room. Not lethal, Helena guessed, but certainly designed to incapacitate. "We need to move," Mike shouted, having dispatched the last drone. The Hestari was slumped against a wall, breathing heavily but alive. Ciala pointed to an emergency exit. "Through there. It leads to the Central Environmental Control Hub. If we can reach it, we might be able to disable the containment fields for all the enclosures." They raced for the exit, the gas swirling around their ankles. Helena helped the injured Hestari while Mike supported one of their wounded team members. As they reached the door, she glanced back at the laboratory, at the tanks filled with twisted combinations of genetic material from thinking, feeling beings, and felt a cold resolve harden within her. This wasn't just about escaping anymore. This was about justice. The Environmental Control Hub was a massive chamber filled with holographic displays monitoring hundreds of artificial habitats. Each screen showed different atmospheric conditions, temperature gradients, and containment field specifications. "Here," Ciala directed them to a central console. "This controls the master override for all enclosures." Mike examined the system. "Can we selectively open enclosures?" "Only for the sentient species." "I'm not sure," Ciala admitted. The system wasn't designed with that distinction in mind. To the consortium, all non-member species are simply specimens. Helena studied the displays. "What about a staged release? Free the more cognitively advanced species first. Give them time to understand what's happening before releasing the others." Before they could implement any plan, the main doors to the hub slid open. Administrator Kelroth entered, flanked by a full security team and Chief Biologist Arin. "I'm disappointed," Kelroth said, his translator giving his voice an artificial calm. "We provided you with comfortable accommodations, educational materials, everything necessary for a humane containment. And this is how you repay our generosity." "Generosity?" Helena stepped forward, anger overcoming caution. "You imprisoned us without trial. You're using sentient beings as genetic stock for weapons development. That violates every principle the consortium claims to uphold." For the first time, she saw uncertainty flicker across Kelroth's features. He turned to Arin. "What is she talking about?" Arin made a dismissive gesture. "Desperate fabrications, Administrator. The human is trying to justify their violent escape attempt." "Then explain this," Mike said, activating a display he'd been working on. The screen showed the laboratory they'd just fled, the tanks of hybrid embryos clearly visible. Kelroth stared, his three-fingered hand rising to his throat in what Helena recognized as a gesture of shock. Project Apex was decommissioned decades ago. The Council ruled it unethical. "The Council doesn't need to know everything we do to protect the consortium," Arin said, dropping all pretense. "These predator species are resources to be utilized. Their containment serves a greater purpose." "You lied to me," Kelroth said slowly. "All the research I approved, the classifications, were necessary to ensure project continuation," Arin finished. "Now, if you'll excuse me, Administrator, I need to secure these escaped specimens before they cause more damage." He gestured to the security team, but to everyone's surprise, they hesitated, looking to Kelroth for confirmation. In that moment of uncertainty, alarms blared throughout the facility. On the monitors, Helena could see enclosure after enclosure experiencing containment failures. The message she and Ciala had broadcast had found sympathetic ears among the staff. "What have you done?" Arin hissed, lunging for the control console. Mike intercepted him, grappling the smaller being away from the controls. "Administrator," Helena pleaded, turning to Kelroth, "you can still fix this. The consortium was founded on noble principles, wasn't it? Conservation, preservation, balance. What's happening here betrays all of that." Kelroth stared at the monitors, watching as beings from dozens of species cautiously explored their suddenly boundary-free environments. "There will be chaos," he said quietly. "Some of these species are natural enemies. Some are truly dangerous. Then help us, Helena urged. Work with us to evacuate the genuinely non-sentient species to safety. Let the thinking beings decide their own fate. For a long moment, Kelroth was silent, his alien features unreadable. Then, slowly, he approached the console. Security team detained Chief Biologist Arhin for violations of Consortium ethical protocols. As Arhin was restrained, spitting protests, Kelroth turned to Helena and the others. I cannot undo the containment failures, but I can prevent further chaos. If you truly wish to help, we must act quickly. What followed was the most remarkable collaboration Helena could have imagined. Humans working alongside Consortium security, Ciala coordinating with other staff members who'd been troubled by the facility's practices, even the Rudax and Hestari joining the effort to maintain order as enclosures emptied. Not all went smoothly. Some predatory species, lacking sentience and understanding only their instincts, had to be recaptured for their own safety and that of others. Some sentient species, bearing grudges against the Consortium or other species, had to be persuaded to participate in the growing coalition. Through it all, Helena found herself working as translator, mediator, and diplomat, the very role she had trained for before their disastrous wrong turn into Consortium space. By the time the facility director arrived with representatives from the Consortium Council, a new order had already begun to emerge. Predator Enclosure was being dismantled, its barriers repurposed to create safe transit corridors. Species that could communicate were engaged in rudimentary negotiations about shared spaces and resources. This is unprecedented. The council representative, a tall being of indeterminate gender with spiraling ridges where a human would have a face, observed. Many of these species were classified as incapable of cooperation. The classifications were wrong, Helena explained, based on incomplete data and prejudice. And criminal manipulation, Kelroth added, still processing his role in what had occurred. Chief Biologist Arhin has been operating an illegal genetic engineering program using specimens from containment. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Consortium delegation. Immediate investigations were ordered, security protocols reviewed, classification systems questioned. In the chaos of reform that followed, Mike found Helena on what had once been the observation deck, now repurposed as a coordination center for the various species representatives. The council is discussing reparations, he told her, for all improperly contained sentient species, including humans. They're offering us transport home. Helena looked out over the transformed facility. Where once there had been separate enclosures, now there were mixed groups of beings, some communicating through translators, others through improvised sign systems, all engaged in the messy, complicated work of understanding each other. We should go home, she agreed. Tell Earth what happened. Prepare them for contact with the wider galaxy. She paused. But I'd like to come back. As an official diplomat this time. There's so much work to be done. Mike nodded, understanding. We've barely scratched the surface of what's out here. And they need someone to remind them that predator doesn't mean monster. As if on cue, a young Rudak approached, its scales shifting through patterns Helena now recognized as indicating curiosity and respect. It offered her a small object, a curved tooth or claw fashioned into a simple pendant. A gift, Ciala translated, floating nearby. In Rudak culture, to acknowledge someone who has seen your true nature. Helena accepted it with appropriate gravity. Please tell them I am honored, and that I hope our species will learn much from each other in the days to come. As Ciala translated, Helena caught sight of Administrator Kelroth speaking with the council representatives, his posture that of someone delivering difficult truths. Whatever happened next would not be simple or easy, but it would be honest, a galaxy coming to terms with its prejudices and the harm they had caused. The former predator enclosure continued its transformation around them, barriers falling, new connections forming. Helena thought of Earth, so distant and yet so similar to this place. A world of creatures labeled dangerous or safe, predator or prey, with little understanding of the complex reality. We're not so different after all, she murmured, fingers closing around the Rudak gift. Predators and prey, all trying to survive, all capable of cruelty and kindness. Mike smiled slightly. That's either comforting or terrifying, depending on your perspective. Both, Helen had decided, like all important truths. Above them, the artificial sky of the Galactic Zoo cycled toward evening, stars beginning to emerge in the simulated night. Soon, they would see real stars again from the observation deck of a ship bound for Earth. But they would return to this place transformed, no longer a zoo or prison, but a meeting ground for species learning, finally, to see each other clearly. In the end, that was all anyone could ask for, not to be defined by fear or prejudice, but to be recognized for what they truly were: complex, contradictory, and worthy of freedom.